Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Interesting. Hey, folks, welcome back to Amped Up with Cliff Schechter, and I am that guy, Cliff Schechter, though it's more amped up with Cliff Schechter and David Schuster these days.
And I'm beyond amped up, Cliff. You know, so I've been struggling for
David's
years.
ready to go.
I've been
Jump
struggling
in,
for years with how to explain the German term schadenfreude, which basically means feeling joy at the misery of others.
Yes.
Watching Sean Hannity and Scott Jennings and all those other conservative MAGA clowns lose their shit last night.
Oh,
That is schadenfreude. It was awesome.
I think we may have to make a video just of like the sad, droopy faces. Yeah, when Hannity, I saw a video of him announcing like some of the victories in Virginia, and he just looked like he was gonna cry.
Especially when he announced Jay Jones. He did it, and Jay Jones is the one who allegedly, threatened physical violence against a rival. And Sean Hannity said, we have a projection in Virginia. Jay Jones has won the.
I know. Wait, Democrats who threaten violence in Texas can win, but Republicans who commit actual violence always win. So I don't understand. Yeah, it's. I mean.
And by the way, I guess we should remind everybody, because I know there's some viewers who are not paying such close attention. For anybody who's just sort of tuning in, Democrats had a sweep last night. They won every major race. They won the California ballot proposal to change the districting to add more Democratic seats in response to Texas. Every single candidate that Donald Trump endorsed and promoted lost.
Yeah.
It was a huge repudiation of Trumpism and MAGA.
Oh, I mean, I would call it fucking colossal.
Yes.
Is the only way I can think of describing it, because it wasn't just the losses. It was the amount that they lost by, the ass kickings. All these right-wing pundits who were trying to do their usual, they've got their fake pollsters to pretend that the race was getting close in New Jersey. Sherrill won by 13 points, destroyed him. And people need to remember, people would say, okay, well, it's New Jersey. Well, first of all, Trump got closer in New Jersey in 24. He only lost by 6 points, which was frightening in Jersey. But also, we were the incumbents, and the incumbent governor, Phil Murphy, is not popular. So it wasn't like Virginia where it was clean, right? We were running against Glenn Youngkin. We were running against, Donald Trump. They had cut all these government jobs right there in Northern Virginia, which Winsome Earls was like, I agree with that. That wasn't a great campaign strategy. But
there goes 330,000 votes in Virginia. Ooh.
Yeah, good work there. But New Jersey should have been different. I mean, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Citarelli or whatever has run a few times, has high name recognition. He in the past, he had run by rejecting Trump and being more moderate. But this time he was dumb enough to embrace Trump. And even though we have an unpopular, not Trump unpopular, but he's in the mid or 40s or something. I think Phil Murphy, the governor, and Democrats control everything, and people are unhappy, and they often blame incumbents. There are other incumbents they see out there who they blame more. Namely, like the weirdo purple blotched orange guy who is busy destroying the East Wing and sending it with their neighbors, busy sending in masked thugs to rappel in and pull them out of windows and that kind of thing. And it really, you could really see it in this. They looked at two different cities. It was Manassas, Virginia. Trying to think of the one in New Jersey that were very similar in demographics. They were both largely Latino, and in each of them, they lost 20% or 21, 22% of the Latino vote was from last time.
And the polling, I mean, it was fascinating, and it gets to, even on Fox News. Fox News was pointing out the two major impacts last night were inflation, the idea that, prices have been rising as opposed to falling, which was what Donald Trump promised. He would cut everything. No, everything's rising. Inflation is going up, grocery prices, everything. That's the first part.
Yeah.
The second part is people are infuriated with Trump. and they see Donald Trump as going too far on things like immigration and his deportation policy. So you put those together. I'm still sort of cynical in the sense that I think people would probably forgive Donald Trump on immigration and destroying the East Wing and everything else if the economy was great. But the economy sucks and people know it. Affordability is a huge issue. And as prices get more difficult for most of us, there's Donald Trump giving more benefits to the billionaires and people,
and holding great Gatsby parties and putting up more gold. You wrote a great piece about the Gatsby thing. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know how else to say this. It's almost like you're suffering. So I think what I'm going to do is give you the middle finger. Right. What is the most obnoxious thing I could do? Wait, I got it. I could put gold all throughout the White House, build a ridiculously expensive, gaudy, gauche, shitty ballroom, and on top of all of that, hold a Gatsby party even though I'm compelled by law to give you your food to eat, I'm going to fight to hold back to not give it to you. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any better contrast you get in the world than that. And, I named this what I named this for a reason, because I've talked a lot about what happened during FDR's time. And the only piece left that we need left, because we won with a bunch of great candidates yesterday that reached people. I've said before, I have some issues with Mamdani, but he ran a fantastic campaign, and frankly, I agree with his economic positions. I agree with 100%. In this day and age, they are necessary. We're not in where we were 10 years ago, and so if you act like we're in the same place we were 10 years ago, you're really not. You either adapt when things change, or if you don't, then you get left behind. And Democratic leadership is just thinking somehow, Chuck Schumer somehow think, we can turn back the clock on Trumpism and go back to before, but make things a little bit better. And it's like, not only can we not go back, things weren't all that great. You could have maybe massively reformed the system back then, and it was doable. But we're well past that point. Like, there is going to be so much that new institutions. That's why I keep saying bring up an FDR-like moment, and that's why I did a little analysis. Now, granted, I brought up that New Jersey leans like, Trump only lost it by 6. It leans in our direction generally, but again, Trump only lost it by 6. But with Cheryl winning it by 13 points. I did an analysis of I looked back at sort of some of those FDR numbers, an analysis of all the House seats, right now that are plus, actually, I should say, Lawrence Winterman helped me do that analysis because he's smarter than me, Lawrence, who works with us, of the plus 14, up to plus 14 Republican seats, you get 148. And that's why I came up with a number of 150. If Democrats, we can have an FDR election, because anybody who doesn't think this economy is going to keep getting worse, that Trump is not going to keep doubling and tripling down on all of his worst stuff. Marjorie Taylor Greene already is somehow the smartest member of the Republican caucus, which is saying a lot, and has been breaking from him because she's seeing the numbers of what just happened last night.
We haven't even gotten the Epstein files yet. Those are still coming.
The Epstein files are coming. He's getting older and looking like he's in worse shape. We've got the economy worsening, and you had 13 Republican state legislators. This is one of my favorite parts of last night. State legislators in Virginia, so that we got a House supermajority, get their asses handed to them. I mean, that was unexpected. And a little known other thing that people don't know that did, which is now Virginia will have the ability to, because they voted for a referendum, much like California did, to net us up to 3 seats by doing mid-decade redistricting. And again, I hate it. I don't want any of that in a perfect world to happen. We should do it in an honest way. But wanting to be honest doesn't mean you cede the field and let fascists take it. If they're going to do what they're going to do in Texas, and they're going to do what they're going to do, even though they've been held back somewhat here in Ohio, looks like they may net nothing, maybe 1 seat, because of factors. But point is, if they're going to do it, we need to do it. And so, and you can go all through the Pennsylvania Supreme Court races, swept them all. Those 2 Georgia races, I guess public utility races, we won by 24 points in each of them. We hadn't won any of those races in like 20 years. I mean, and you can keep going through all of this. So that's why I just said I'm going bold. FDR in 1932 won 313 House seats. I figured I'd look at the numbers in Jersey. She won by 13 points. I'm going up to 13 or 14 plus Republican, and I'm saying if we will embrace pointing out that it is Trump and his billionaires that are taking away both our economic freedom and our personal freedoms by attacking democracy and our economy, and they're doing it in back rooms while screwing everybody all the way up to the upper middle class, all the way down to the poorest among us. I honestly believe that we can put something together that even makes last night look like a
And I'm
small
so glad, Cliff, I mean, you mentioned not only sort of affordability as a sort of a driving issue, but also the talent of the candidates. And I think Democrats got a good reminder. I mean, I had somebody who, my favorite person on this planet, my mom, who texted me earlier and said, Mom, Donnie is so impressive politically. Can he achieve some of what he wants to do? And I felt like my mom right there identified two key things. First, yes, Mamdani's political skills are off the charts.
They are.
He is incredibly talented. But the other thing about it is, in the midst of an affordability crisis, say specifically in New York, but I think across the country, I'm not sure that the government grocery stores or the free buses will necessarily work. But people are desperate for somebody to try something that is creative, to be bold about addressing things like affordability. And Mamdani's vow to be bold, and the Democrats who won, who are also likely, who are saying, hey, we're going to be bold in our policies to try to narrow the wealth gap and deal with affordability. That matters much more, I think, than necessarily whether everything's going to work. And so I think Democrats have the message right there in front of us if we grab it.
I want to get Stephanie in here, our resident brilliant historian, so she could join in because I see she's there.
Hi, guys.
Wilson.
Hello, Stephanie.
Hello. Nice to see you guys.
Welcome. Welcome. I mean, it's so nice to be able to have a brilliant historian on today, but also just a day when we can all smile and be happy for once and really mock the shit out of Republicans, pardon my whatever. But I don't like them much. So I'm just going to have to say these things. And the real thing to me, as we were talking about, would love to get your take and all that. But, to me, it wasn't just, it was the groups they lost yesterday. It was the breadth of the rejection. It was, obviously the size of some of those victories. And I think, as David pointed out, I wrote a piece about this before, the political talent, all three people who are running, because they all are not the same politically, right? Spanberger is more moderate than and same with Cheryl, but they all were people that learned from these past elections. We've spent so much money on network TV that is such a waste. They put a ton into digital. They did a lot of streaming. They did a lot of stuff off the cuff. I mean, neither of the female governor elects are on Mom Downey's level, but they both showed their personalities. They shared their personal stories. Like they showed how their stories informed their values, not just showing people a chart of where we are. And I feel like that was all huge, but I want to kick it to you and you can be like, no, Cliff, you're wrong and you're an idiot. Or you can be like, whatever you want to say.
Before Stephanie says the word, I just want to say to everybody, Stephanie is not only an acclaimed historian who everybody should follow, but she has an amazing Substack, Freedom Over Fascism. She's done some incredible work. So with that, Stephanie,
yes,
take it away.
I was even watching her live stream right before this show as she was talking to her people.
As she crashed out because
you were awesome. Come on.
All right, thanks. Well, thank you both for the kind words. I could say that you're crazy, but then I'd be lying.
Maybe.
I think you put your finger on it. And I just had a conversation with one of my guests. It's about authenticity, but not the forced authenticity that a lot of politicians, they're like, hear the guidance, like you need to be authentic, but they don't know how to be authentic because they haven't been authentic for as long as they've been in politics.
Right.
So, and the new media, they don't really understand and haven't hired people who do, which it's really not that hard to hire people who know what's going on. They're just a little bit younger. So I think Mamdani for sure. I mean, he had such generative, the campaign was so generative, so many new ideas, so many creative ideas, both in campaigning and in policies. I think that was really attractive. The Jewish community is tearing itself to shreds and needs to get over itself. But that's another conversation I'm having next week, 2 weeks from now.
I'd love to join for that. I just want to be clear. I've said some things. To me, I don't think that Mamdani is an anti-Semite. I think he said some things that, at the time, particularly when you put them in the context of what was going on after October 7th, I'm Jewish, obviously hit some, we're tough for us. I think it is something he should address. I also think the Jewish community should have conversations about this and speak to him, because we should all come together on these things is what we should do. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, recently Deborah Shushan, who was the former political director at J Street, she's coming on in a couple of weeks, and she just wrote a piece about how Jewish, and I'm Jewish too, so I'm part of the tribe here, that the Jewish response to Mamdani is much more about the Jewish community than it is about Mamdani. And and by that, I think she means is he has done a ton of reaching out, a ton of bridge building, and Lander, he endorsed him from the beginning. And, you just don't endorse some dude as, a Jewish politician that is truly anti-Semitic. I mean,
I think corporate media, as usual, I don't want to cut you off, but is part of the culprit, right? Because I started looking things up and I found, Mamdani went and had this meeting with this Jewish group, and he went and
before the election. I mean, one of the largest Hasidic sects in Brooklyn, their leader sat down with Mamdani and endorsed him and said he's a nice guy. And
because he wrote them a letter in Yiddish.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
But that doesn't get the New York Post shockingly doesn't report that. So that's the thing is, I think we all have to sort of say, I think in the past he said a few things that I don't think he knew. When he was talking about globalizing the Antifada and whatever, I think he was thinking struggle for freedom and for equality. And I think there are Jews who have learned to see that phrase in a different light. And I just think we have to all sort of realize we're in this together. We have the same values, and we are fighting, just an incredibly evil force on the other side. And this guy is talented as hell. So, at least give him a chance. If he proves that, you're right, you who don't want to give him who doesn't want to accept that he's not anti-Semitic, and he comes out and he starts saying some things you're doing, okay, but give him a chance. I mean,
right.
Listen,
it's not like Cuomo was really, someone that.
Yeah, that was the best they could come up with. I think says everything about the insiders among Democrats right now that needs to be said. Let's go with the guy who's the nepotism guy who sexually harassed women and had to resign from governor, and everybody hates. That's the guy.
Well, I think that's a really huge problem right now is the Democratic insiders. Hakeem Jeffries tweeted this morning, Democrats are back. Well, Democratic voters came out. The official Democratic establishment, I think that they're just really out of touch. And this whole idea from Carville, who should have retired years ago, and Axelrod and Pluff, who I have admired, saying, talking about how it's all about the middle. Like, really? Have you spent any time among, the people out here in the real world? Because the people we interact with share our values. I don't know what is considered in the middle, frankly. It's like either fascism or not,
Stephanie, did you sense I was picking up sort of a certain rage that I heard from so many Democrats last night in these contests in California, Virginia, New Jersey, New York, that there is not only just sort of this rage against Trump, but also sort of a rage in terms of the overall economic affordability crisis that is enveloping so many people, and that this rage is part of what was expressed last night, not necessarily because anybody really likes Democrats in terms of party idea or anything like that, but just, oh my God, something has to be done. And here's some candidates who are starting to speak about that sort of language.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. But I think there's also a lot of rage directed at congressional Democrats, people who don't seem to even if they get it, they don't seem to be able to convert it into some sort of authentic speech or action. I think what the pro-democracy movement wants is, as I said, authenticity, but that's kind of a shorthand for saying, I see you, I know that it's really hard, and I am going to fight for you. I'm not just going to listen to my donors and shrink off without a spine. Like, I think it's kind of, it goes together. And as much as Gavin is a corporate candidate, he learned, he struck the right tone, I think, that people really want to hear, is that, we're taking this seriously. If we, if Biden was super serious about our democracy slipping away, and Kamala was super serious about our democracy slipping away, like, they certainly didn't act in a way that made it seem really, like a dire.
Well, that Roosevelt Institute report came out, right, which you may have seen, and it talked about some of these things and again, so this just showed me what these are the things that David and I and others, I'm sure you have been screaming about for years, that have been frustrating to us. And it was all about how when they did actually defend labor and take on corporations, they didn't want to talk about it publicly. They didn't want to brag because they didn't want to offend individual corporations by calling them out. Oh my God. It's sort of like, is that not the opposite of, like, I invite their hatred? That's what I'm looking for.
Right.
The old FDR line, which is, when you have a country where monopolies are taking over everything, where everything's being gobbled up, so there's no competition, you've got billionaires who are billionaires hundreds of times over, and we're not feeding people. And I mean, like, if you have, I don't, again, there were analyses to be done in 2013, 14, back in 2007, 2007, if I can speak English, 2008. Times change. We're in a different period. The reign of oligarchs, the control, the wealth being controlled by so few and literally taken out of our pockets, by these Republican bills and ones in the past that even Democrats have signed off on. I mean, I don't understand how Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and others like them can sit there and be like, let's talk about subsidies and tax credits. And no, this is a time for systemic change. This is a time for big things. I don't want to hear about subsidies and tax credits and stern letters, Well,
I think that you have hit on, I'm sorry, I'm fidgeting, so my fidgets are kind of hanging out. I think you hit on two different things. One is the small ball that they want to play, and one is how they talk about it. And they're intertwined, right? Like, I saw Catherine Clark on yesterday, and she's my rep, and she's the whip, and she was like a rehearsed, I met this woman, Teresa, at the food bank, and she has a kid, and but like, not talking like someone you love, like you could be starving next. Like, it's not about some weird person out there that doesn't have a face or a name. We need to be able to talk about it and get people in their belly buttons, and not just talk about, well, there's the small ball aspect, the subsidies and whatever, and the fact that we need systemic change to fix systemic problems. And we're not going to fix systemic problems with individual solutions. And also, we need to learn how to talk about it better. And that information is out there. There are lots of people who have won lots of different campaigns with the kinds of messages that actually connect.
We just saw a whole bunch of them.
Right. And yet, particularly the congressional Dems are not getting, I mean, there's a few, there's
some that speak out. The problem I find is there's leadership, and a lot of people are scared of crossing them. And then you do get some Jasmine Crockett's and Eric Swalwells and people that seem to just not care. And I'm glad, and I hope that becomes that's the trend that others follow. AOC,
Right.
another one.
But we could count, all right, we could count them on AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Chris Murphy, Swalwell, Cory Booker's kind of in the middle, like Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, like you can basically count them on two hands, and that's really sad. And
is that, you think, the roadblock? I mean, Cliff started the show, and I agree with Cliff that, based on the numbers we saw last night, we could be looking at an FDR type of landslide in the midterm elections. We could, but it feels like the biggest obstacle to getting there is, will more Democrats be bold and embrace the strong institutional change that Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and others represent, or will they try to sort of play it safe with Jeffries and Schumer and sort of small ball, as we say? And is that perhaps the biggest obstacle to Democrats possibly having a huge wave election?
Well, I think it's definitely a part of it. I mean, I think that the leadership probably talks more than anybody else that they talk to, not to like people out here, not to actually good consultants, but they're donors and whoever. And they have a stake in the current situation. So yeah, I agree. It could be a wave election. There's got to be a shit ton of organizing and enough follow through by the party that the voters think that there's some group there that's going to back them up in real life, because just, these, I don't know, these spineless statements don't really do it for that many people.
I mean, and that was what I was trying to say with the title of this. I mean, sure, make it intriguing. So people, you're saying they're going to win 150 House seats. I'm saying they are, if they do this, right? I mean, right. It's right there. It's right there. We've seen it before in history. We've seen it before recently. We know how angry people are. We know what people want. We know the instability of our system right now, because we've experienced other periods of time like this where there have been, upheavals, and you saw it in how many Republican voters and independents voted for Democrats yesterday and voted for liberal-minded or progressive or whatever you want to call them, ballot measures and these kinds of things. It's clearly there. It's just, if you sit there and and as you said, talk to your couple billionaire donors, are like, well, we don't want to say anything bad about billionaires. So, I mean, these are people who are attacking George Soros on the other side all the time, when the guy that actually does the stuff that they attack George Soros of is Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk really was meeting in back rooms, deciding our financial fates, firing people, and all the crap that they pour on. But the fact that we're not calling him out every day and making him the sort of the focus. I mean, him and that weirdo Peter Thiel, and it's just.
Well,
it's incredible.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we need to be calling out. I mean, maybe we've moved on to Peter Thiel, but Russell Vought, like the Republicans have done, and I got to give them credit. They've been working on this for 50 years. And we think about time in election cycles. Like we're talking about the next election, which is important, but we also need to be really thinking about the next 50 years. Because what we do now will, influence it. And there have been so few countries that have faced fascism the way that we're facing it now and defeated it without a war or a revolution. Like we're talking one, and maybe we would have come to sort of war or revolution before FDR stepped in.
That's what I mean. We needed him, so all that energy went in that direction. And my fear is, if we don't have that, if we try this small ball crap, all the anger and energy will be sapped up by some fascist demagogue.
I totally agree. And I think we as Democrats, we don't want to lie. We don't want to get it a little bit wrong. So like the big ideas, whether they're achievable or not, in the next 2 years, that doesn't really matter. We just have to like set the course and set it big, and then constantly talk about it and not just squirrel all over the place, even though the other side is trying to get us to squirrel all over the place because everything they do is horrendous.
Yes.
But
Stephanie, you mentioned,
yeah.
I mean, the other side and how many years they've spent building up conservative media infrastructure and think tanks and on and on and on. How far behind do you see Democrats being now, and what can Democrats as a party, as an institution, do, say, over the next 4, 6, 8 years to catch up?
I think we're decades behind. I mean, because remember, it was in 2010 that the Republicans came out with their the state house policy, and they won all those state houses. And that's where a lot of the, there became laboratories of autocracy like David Pepper talks about. So I think,
and I'm here in Ohio and actually have done work with David. So I know David, and we're a classic example. We were a swing state, and one of the key reasons we're where we are is because they hatched that plan and took over, our state house in 2010 and everything else. And we've had a hard time winning anything since then.
Because
everything, with their power.
Exactly. And I've worked in Indiana too, and it's the same general story. It went for Obama, but then, then they won a supermajority and gerrymandered the hell out of the state. And, and I think David's idea is something that we need to be looking at on a very long term, is we need to be contesting every single race at every single level. And we need to be funding those candidates, even a little bit, but enough so that they can get a campaign off the ground. Because I think a lot of them could make progress, because no one's like, a Democrat hasn't won in a lot of those, hasn't run in a lot of those districts in a really long time. But I think that, it makes sense to, start with the swing states and start with the swing districts, but it can't end there. It's got to go deep into the red. I mean, look at Georgia. My God.
I know, right?
I mean, the idea that everybody in a red state is MAGA is just wrong.
I'm not.
And you're not. I mean, whatever, 45% of all of those states are people who share our values. So, so I think we need a shorter term plan that really understands where we are in the moment with the technology, with the media, with what authenticity means, how you talk to people. And we have to have a medium term plan about electing more people and ground organizing and merging both the institutional side with the grassroots side. And then we need a long-term plan that I think takes into account the big systems and the big problems that need much more creative thinking than, tweaking this or tweaking that. On my show, I ask everybody what their for some radical creativity. What radically creative idea do you have for when we come out of this? And it doesn't have to be necessarily achievable, but we have to start thinking a whole lot bigger than, subsidies and the next
in fact,
election.
Like Lawrence and I were having a big conversation about that last night. I got all sorts of crazy ideas that I
asked him. He was on my show yesterday, so I asked him. And we decided that we could probably figure it all out. And I think we could, if it's 3 of us, as opposed to, like we could get it all figured out probably within 2 hours,
I'm sure a lot of stuff. I'll just say quickly, David wants to ask something, so I don't want to say, but like a classic example is, and some of these that we would need an FDR-style win because we have to be speaking big. Some of these will be constitutional amendments and that kind of thing. But the fact, look at right now, the fact that the president appoints the attorney general, who then is supposed to look into the president. Like it makes sense that the president appoints the defense secretary or the state, at the State Department and at Treasury, because they're supposed to be his advisors. But the DOJ, that's supposed to be the people's lawyer, not the president's. So it makes absolutely zero sense. And we were talking about it last time. Like, I honestly believe we should set up and have a separate federal election. It's just one more check on power that you potentially get if you can elect an attorney general of a different part. I mean, that's just one. There's a million things out there like that, but I don't want to.
Well, and once Democrats do get back into power, then there's some ideas that have been sitting around for 8-10 years. Look at when Bernie Sanders in 2016 I think he was proposing free college tuition, free college enrollment. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I think, or maybe it was Bernie Sanders, had this idea of a penny tax on every Wall Street trade. If all you're going to do is trade pieces of paper, well, at least, you pay a penny tax on that. And that's, so there's lots of different ways to raise revenue and to have the wealthy contribute more. And then I think the big one is somehow we have to figure out how to get the profit motive out of healthcare. And I think those are dramatic changes that if, we can squabble over the details and there's debates and there's very strong debates over different particulars. But if Democrats can come out and say, this is what we stand for, and we're going to go for something big, I think it does provide the energy that Democrats were able to capture last night.
I think you're right. And I think, I have issues. Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, I think, have a lot of really good things to say. I think they kind of missed the boat on some of the race relations situations. But, and in some ways, having Bernie shouting about Medicare for all these years has really done what third parties are essentially have done throughout our history, which is bring fringier ideas into the mainstream. Yeah. Because, even in the 2020 election, people are like, Medicare for all, oh my gosh, we couldn't do that. But we have 4 different freaking healthcare systems in this country.
Right.
One of which is Medicare that works.
And the veteran system, which is socialist, and that works. I mean,
exactly.
They're trying to make it not work by cutting all of its funding, but when you fund it, it works quite well.
Exactly. That's like, I don't think we consider that these are they are completely different systems that are all coexisting, but all aside, the veterans and Medicare are really not. Medicare is a little bit tied to the profit motive of the insurance companies, but we need to disentangle medical insurance from employment. Like when did that? I mean, when was that ever a good idea? I guess if nobody had any health insurance, then getting someone from your employer was a step up. But like, work is different now. Yeah.
Gig economy kind of changes all of that. And I mean, again, we saw this coming. We've been in a stasis because we've allowed another one of those things that drives me insane that I bring up probably all the time, which is we allowed Mitch McConnell to wield the filibuster, which is not in the Constitution, which says the Senate is a majority body and it was an accident of history and was only used to stop civil rights legislation forever. Which really nicely done there. And then he grabbed it and turned it into something where we needed 60 votes for everything when the Constitution says the presiding officer in the Senate makes those decisions, which would be the vice president, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden or whoever should have just said, it's unconstitutional, we're not respecting it, and kicked it away and let the parliamentarian try to stop me. And instead, we let all this anger build up that I think helped lead to Trump, because there was all this legislation the House passed in like 2008, and after that, none of which we could pass because they kept filibustering.
Right. And beyond the filibuster, we allowed McConnell to, hold up Merrick Garland for a year, and Mike Johnson right now holding up swearing in Grijalva.
Yeah, Grijalva. Yep.
I mess up names. So, and you've got to think that there are ways to wield power to make that not happen. But either our side is unwilling to wield it or isn't creative enough to find it. And I'm not sure which is true.
Stephanie, you mentioned a short time ago about sort of the roadmap that we're sort of following towards fascism. And as a historian, and I've heard, other historians say that, the thing about sort of fascism, authoritarianism, is it's not like you flip a switch and it happens overnight. It's a very sort of slow process, and suddenly the frog is boiling before it knows that it's warm. How do you evaluate the speed with which Donald Trump has operated in these first 10 months, and how that compares historically with other authoritarian figures or fascist wannabes or fascist regimes?
Much faster. We've gone from, Joe Biden, who essentially, played by all the rules and the norms, to a country where they've essentially overridden the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment with due process, the Fourth Amendment with all of these kidnappings. I think we went from, whatever it is, Germany 1931 to Germany 1937 or 8 really freaking fast. And I think that we are underestimating a great night like this with Democratic wins is fantastic. But it's not, I don't think we're going to vote ourselves out of this, because I don't think that free and fair elections are things that will be allowed to happen, right? Like last time, there are very obviously things that, the presidential, right? There were those bomb threats, and there were the evacuations, and all sorts of other, I think, really well reasoned and evidence-based thoughts about how that election turned out the way it did. But I don't think we can discount the fact that's what they're really, between gerrymandering and all of these troops on the streets, and they are looking for every possible way so that election is not free or fair, and that Democrats cannot win it.
Can we look? Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
All right. I'm done.
Can we look to a place? I can think of one recently, which is Poland, which had 8 years under what one would call something pretty close to a fascist regime, and actually found their way out of it. Is that a model that we can look at and learn anything from? I don't know. I know you're an American historian, so
I'm actually.
Well, then I don't know anything.
Actually, my doctorate is in Middle Eastern studies.
Well, I know that you're actually a Middle Eastern historian, as I was saying.
Yeah. Remember that Poland did this before with Solidarity and Lech Walesa, and so it is not new to them to know how to come to that other revolution. Was the only, I think, one of the only ones that that worked without, there are the color revolutions, but that example of Poland the first time, I think, probably made the second time easier, because they had experience and mythology around coming together and making a big difference with solidarity and trade unions and all of those sorts of things.
Are there any tactics or anything that you know of anyhow that worked that we can try?
I think sustained, visible resistance, which I know is kicking off in DC today. I don't know how well that'll work. I can think of a lot of things that different states could do, but I don't know whether that gets us out of our moment or into another moment. That's even more perilous. But I think sustained resistance and using the power of boycotts and using the power of strikes and using all the different levers that we know society moves on at once. Like, I don't think we can try one thing at a time. We can't do it in sequence. It's got to be everything, everywhere, all at once.
I think that makes sense. So I'll ask, or do you have something you want to ask, David?
No, go ahead.
I heard when I was listening to your awesome live stream, you were talking about something that I often sadly point to, which is our, right away, Reconstruction. From that moment when we failed, God, if we could have kept Ulysses Grant in there forever. When Reconstruction was working, but then, Rutherford B. Hayes in Florida and all that crap, because Florida screws everything up all the time. Sorry, people from Florida. That's how Rutherford B. Hayes, by the way, won the election. For people who don't know, over Samuel Tilden. Is Florida, there were disputed votes, and Florida threw its votes to Hayes if he would just sort of let Reconstruction end.
Yeah.
And we paid for that for 80 years or so after that. So
yeah, I'd argue we're still paying for it.
Great point. And so here's another moment. I mean, let's say we come out of this, which we're all hoping we do. Let's say we all do stand up. We had a great, I'll try to see the positive of it. We had a great No Kings rally. We have a great independent media outlets like these that are forming that speak out. So people don't just have to watch corporate media, which is dying. We've got some terrific candidates out there that aren't sort of being the wimps that leadership wants them to be, that are speaking out. A bunch of them just won. There are things state attorneys general can do. There are things that others can do. So we do come out of this. Truth and Reconciliation Committee, how do we handle all the awful, all of the corruption, all of the just everything we're seeing now to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of not going through with Reconstruction? Or
we definitely need,
when Obama came in, and I think Obama did some good things, but the not looking back at torture and stuff like that, with Cheney just passing away, a reminder of that, also didn't work out so well for us.
Yeah, I think we're going to need a real Truth and Reconciliation something. And I think it's going to be really hard given the number of people who have made white people who have made white supremacy and white Christian supremacy the center of their identities. We're going to have to get super creative with what that looks like. Whether, I mean, in South Africa, they gave people amnesty if they came and talked about what they had done. The Afrikaners, if they came and talked about what they had done, essentially with the people they had done it to. I do not see that work. I mean, like, we would have to come a really long way in this country to get to a point where that would be possible. I don't think we're anywhere close right now, but we're going to have some reckoning. And I don't know whether it's going to have to include reparations. It's going to have to include some really, really big creative thinking and some sort of disincentive for racism, which we don't really have right now.
And I wonder if that's something that our leaders, let's just assume Democrats take back power, our leaders need to follow through with, even if there's not popular support for it. And what I mean is, I go back to, for example, the 2000 presidential election, George W. Bush, Al Gore. It's essentially a tie, but Bush decided he would govern as if he had gotten a mandate. Karl Rove said, govern as if you have a mandate. I wonder if Democrats, and this gets to sort of my cynicism, I keep thinking that the reason Democrats are doing so well right now is because the economy sucks. People realize it. People realize it with the affordability and inflation. The economies may not always suck, but if that's the reason that Democrats are able to have a wave election in 2026 and possibly win back the presidency in 2028, it shouldn't matter what the reason is that they sweep back into power. Democrats should use that opportunity then to go back and have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and to do all the things that are necessary, have our own sort of Project 2028 to reverse all the things that Donald Trump has done that have fouled up our institutions.
I agree with that to a point, but I think that just reversing what they did is already, like, that ship has sailed. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to have to really build new institutions from pretty much scratch. And that gives us a really good opportunity. But we're always going to have the, nearly divided 50-50 situation. It will always come down to who comes out to vote and who can talk to the voters better. I think with this wealth gap, I don't see that closing on its own. So I think the economy is going to suck for the vast majority of Americans for the foreseeable future. I don't see that really gets better as more and more money keeps, making its way to the 5 richest people or the 900 billionaires, without some really big efforts to stop that wealth transfer or, transfer it back in some way. I mean, that's a really cold way of saying it, but really we have to make sure that everyone's got the freedom to eat, to feed their kids, to go to school, to go to school without getting shot, to, have autonomy over their bodies, to thrive in all the ways that don't hurt other people. I think we have to.
I think again, we all saw what ended up happening. David brought up 2000 with votes for Nader and votes for Jill Stein, and how third parties can affect our election, even just a small amount being siphoned off. And I have to believe, and I could be wrong, but that some of the MAGA Civil War stuff, I mean, it's not just at this point, they're not just acting it out. There are factions there. Nick Fuentes versus Ben Shapiro, which I might pay some money to watch that fight. That's a good prize fight. Get a little popcorn. But I mean, there are these factions that are fighting it out, and I think maybe anything we can do to exacerbate that, because the truth of the matter is that if 5% walk away, and I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is looking at some numbers and looking at, various things. Obviously, maybe some of the numbers that ended up happening in Georgia last night, to walk away quite publicly from Donald Trump. So
who would have thought that she would have any sort of, well, I don't even think it's moral courage. It's whether she has the courage to, invoke the wrath of the GOP. And, she started with the Epstein thing, or maybe she knows, how bad it's going to get and wants to get out like really, really far away from it. I don't know, but I think there are cracks and we need to exploit them, just as they stick a chisel in any cracks they find and wrench it open. We need to be doing the same. But often I think we fear not looking gentle or
that's always been our biggest problems. We must be the ones who are proper, and no.
To me, that means that we should remind Marjorie Taylor Greene that she was passed over, not only to be part of Donald Trump's cabinet, but to be vice president. She should have been considered. I mean, those are some of the reasons why apparently she started down this path, that she was so.
And they didn't want to run for senator or governor of Georgia, because obviously they hate you, Marjorie. Like, why would you not go after them?
She feels so betrayed, but regardless of what is motivating her. Yeah, I think we need to continue to support her and Tom Massey and Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, who are, those are the four on the petition for
Nancy Mace. Like, what the? I know. Think about Rand.
She's not busy fighting with police officers at airports.
Right.
I mean, these people, there are mostly various forms of crazy, and okay, fine. But if they will turn against Trump, and there will be more, because there will be people who saw some of these elections last night and saw what happened in some of their districts. If I'm correct in what I read earlier, every single county in New Jersey and Virginia moved in a blue direction last night. Every single one. That means it doesn't matter where you're a member of Congress from those two states. If you're a Republican, your area moved in a blue direction. They're going to look at those numbers, and I think we need to exploit that as much as possible. Again, some of it's going to be over this sort of, Nazi right, with Fuentes, which I always find fun saying Nazi Fuentes.
Yeah.
I don't get it, but okay. And Shapiro, whatever the hell right he represents, which is still obnoxious,
weird.
you know, whatever. But again, there's other cracks too. Laura Loomer's fighting with various other ones, and I mean, when you get a bunch of you know, people that need padded walls in a room together, that think bad things tend to happen, and that's a lot of their party. There's a lot of egos. There's a lot of, so I think I do think that there's opportunity there to encourage those various, you know, factions to, because they're going to, because the thing is what tells me is, there, you brought up the Epstein files, that could blow the whole thing open. All right, I don't want to put too much hope in it, but it could, depending on what you know.
I don't know. Rumors are circulating about how bad it could be, and it could be really, really, really freaking bad.
That's what I've heard. It could be horrifically bad. And then on top of that, you know, you've got this battle going, as Trump looks and is obviously more feeble and more dementia addled. There are going to be those people trying to step into the vacuum there. You almost heard JD Vance do it a little bit, then he backed off because I think he was scared the old man might come around and beat him. You know, when he was,
or Peter Thiel said, "Not yet.
Yeah,
bide your time."
Yeah, I mean,
he'll be there.
So I mean, there are like numerous factions, and you know, it's not even just one civil war. There could be a number. And again, I want to point out, presidential elections, you know, have been won and lost with third parties voting for even a couple percent. So I mean, not just presidential, but in some of these congressional races, a few percent stay home, you know, who are mad. And if they do turn against Trump, the one thing we know about Trump is he is the most angry, vicious person alive. Like, he will not. So he doesn't care who he hurts, as long as, you know, when his ego's been hurt, he will encourage, even if he only still has 5% support, he will encourage that 5% to stay home in 2026 and not vote for Republicans. And that could actually lead to 50 more seats where we went. So, I mean, you don't know, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think strongest supporters weren't involved politically before he came on the scene, and might not be again when he leaves. But
yeah, well, that's some of that extra turnout that's helped him, you know, confound expectations. But when he's not on the ballot, it doesn't happen. I'm just saying, like, I agree with you. I'm not studying enough history. We're not in a good place. And I'm not saying we are, but I do think that there are various possibilities when it comes to some are electoral, some are legal, some are protesting, it's a variety of things.
And Stephanie, before we wrap up here, and I feel like I should be calling you Dr. Wilson, not Stephanie.
Yeah,
no. My parents were PhDs, and it was a very important point of pride that they were doctors. But I heard you mention Indiana. What's your connection to Indiana?
Okay. First of all, I am always willing to be introduced as doctor, but call me Stephanie, because I'm not the useful kind of doctor. And also Dr. Wilson.
Yes, you are. You're very.
My father-in-law was an anesthesiologist, and he's kind of, and my husband's cousin. They're all Dr. Wilsons too, a lot of them. So, I don't know. It just feels a little weird, but I do claim that doctorate. What's the question again?
Indiana.
Indiana. Okay. So I worked in 2020 for kind of a parallel Biden social media organization, the Biden Digital Coalition. It wasn't connected to the campaign. It was sort of independent. And one of the people, and I was a Facebook director, one of the people on my team moved to Indiana, South Bend. And she contacted me. That was a period of time where I was designing websites. So she asked me to design a website for the nonprofit she was involved in. And then I designed a website and some content for Destiny Wells, which she mostly didn't use. And then I ran communications for a House candidate who also didn't win. And
Okay, most of the ones we work for in the end don't win. We just like to talk about the ones that do.
right. Yeah.
So you spent
like,
time in Indiana.
not physically, but yes, I've spent a lot
David
of
is
time
from
in
Indiana, so say nice things.
I grew up in Bloomington, so that's Indiana's near and dear to my heart. So when my
Well,
ears always perk up when I hear somebody mention Indiana. Well,
Indiana.
Stephanie, for everybody who's, where can people find you? We mentioned the Substack, Freedom Over Fascism. What are all your contacts in terms of, X or Blue Sky? I mean, how do people find you?
Right. So I'm not on X anymore. I haven't been for 2 years. I'm at freedomoverfascism.us will take you straight to my Substack, which is also a podcast, which you can get anywhere you get your podcast, but you can also get on the Substack. And I'm on Blue Sky, although I don't tend to do very much there. And I'm on YouTube as Freedom Over Fascism Pod. So I'm around, but Substack's my main home.
All right. Just like us.
Thank you.
That's where you guys should head to, and we'll be subscribing and
everybody else should subscribe to Dr. Stephanie Wilson.
That's
Dr.
right.
Stephanie, Dr. Wilson. You got the PhD. That's a big deal in my family, Stephanie.
The useful kind of doctor, not these. I'm just kidding. All
I
doctors
thought
are
he used to get very mad. He was a PhD, but he would get very mad because then his mother, my grandmother, he would come to visit her in the senior citizens home in Montreal, and she'd say, "This is my son, Dr. Schuster." And then people say, "Oh, can you help me with my arm?" And my dad was so mad, he would say, "Let me look at this. Oh, I think you should have your physician look at this."
Yeah. I don't want to fool anybody into thinking I could save their life, because I can't.
Hey, I can't even really explain stuff because I'm just ABD. So,
Yeah. Well, the trick is like before the kids, like back, you got to do it. Like
I had the first kid come along and the dissertation was sitting there and we were offered, I was offered a consulting gig and I was like, pay for my kids' diapers or write my dissertation. And it I never got back to it, which I've always regretted, but maybe someday.
Yeah. Yeah, my husband was like, "We're not trying for a kid until you finish." I'm like, "No, we can." Nope,
wow, that's pretty.
No way. He was right.
This has been awesome and informative.
Yeah. Great to be on with you, Stephanie.
It has been fantastic to be on with you guys. I really enjoyed hanging out with you, and I want to thank you for really important stuff you're doing, and make a pitch for us all to be working together to lift each other up and amplify each other.
I feel that's why we have it in our name. We believe in amplifying blue. So that's what we want to do. So Freedom Over Fascism. You can find Dr. Stephanie Wilson there. Same thing with Freedom Over Fascism Pod on YouTube. David Schuster, who values his children, has to go and pick them up at school, which we all respect around here.
Absolutely. Mine just wandered in a couple minutes ago.
Have them say hi. That's the way that one guy went viral and like forever.
The guy in Korea.
Yeah. He actually went to Miami, Ohio, which a lot of members of my family have gone to. So my wife's family, I should say. So thank you, David, Stephanie. Thank you so much. Please, let's be in touch. And we'll have you back here if you want to lower your show to the level of having us on. We would be happy to do that. And
well, you guys are the ones that convinced me that I could do a show 2 times a week and not have to do it 5 times a week. So
cool.
You're actually my model for.
All right.
I went from maybe I could do it to I'm doing it in about 20 minutes, but
5 is
you guys are my inspiration.
If you want to do other stuff, 5 kind of makes it hard to do anything else. But
quality over quantity. Yes.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Stephanie. I will say a quick goodbye to the folks here. Just wanted to thank you all for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed it, right? We had a good conversation. We had a great night last night. Yes, as Stephanie pointed out, there are still challenges. This is one battle in a longer war, and we're going to have to keep fighting to win everything back. But we can do that. That's the thing. It's been done before. And hell, we got rid of a king once. So we have some history there. Kind of like Poland in that way. Not quite as recent. That's it. As my new policy is, I will encourage folks and remind them getting guests like this, putting in this time is not easy. Please support us. Go and subscribe at Substack, is where we spend a lot of time. Blueamp.co. We'll have another show there tomorrow at 2 p.m. And that will be with Dean Obadala. You may be familiar with him, progressive radio host on Sirius Satellite, all around great guy, comedian. We will let you know about some other folks in the future. As I started saying before, this isn't easy. So please, even 99 cents, $1.99, anything, super chat, sticker, anything, we encourage and appreciate anything you can do to support us. And other than that, I hopefully will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Substack for our interview with Dean. And thank you for being here. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And damn it, I hope you have a hell of a day and evening. Seriously. As the sun sets slowly in the west, my friends, I bid you a fond farewell.